Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. I hope everybody had a fantastic Thanksgiving, enjoyed some good food and family time. And though there were no games on Thanksgiving, I hope, there were football games, but no basketball games. I hope that everybody got to catch some good games over the weekend. And we, in fact, maybe caught what might be the game of the year so far last night, Sap, when the two best teams in the NBA squared off. The Suns and the Warriors played a terrific game. I don't know if everybody was able to stay up for it because it ended around 1 a.m, but ultimately the Phoenix Suns won 104-96. The Suns won I believe that's their 17th game in a row, Sap. And is this an early Western Conference
17?
Finals preview?
It sure looks it, right? They're both 18-3 right now. Phoenix has won 17 in a row after a 1-3 start. Golden State's played outstanding this year. They look at the teams in the Western Conference, maybe the teams in basketball, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and if Miami gets healthy, those are three teams in the East that I think could certainly contend. And I still think the Lakers can be heard from. Once they decide to play defense, I think that they'll still be a contending team. But right now, Golden State and Phoenix look like the two best teams, and you just really enjoyed watching the way they play. They both play really good defense, right? But just as impressive as that is how they move the basketball. It's almost like a soccer field to it where it's constantly moving. You know, Steph Curry moves better without the ball than any player I've ever seen. Phoenix has a real outstanding big three, and it's kind of an old school big three, Jet, because you've got the heady point guard who's the veteran, you've got the slasher, the wing guy in Devin Booker, who's reminds me so much of Ray Allen. And then you've got DeAndre Ayton, who's a classic big, reminds me of a young Robert Parrish. So you've got a really good big three because they all kind of fit their roles. I mean, look at what with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and there's a lot of redundancy there, right? They're similar type players, and sometimes that doesn't always work. With Phoenix, the pecking order. Chris Paul's the leader. Devin Booker is the primary scorer, and DeAndre Ayton's the guy who can rebound, score inside, and protect the rim. And then they've got all those other players that fit in and fill their roles. I mean, the narrative today is, Phoenix is the best team in basketball. I'm going to hold back a little bit on that, although they have won 17 in a row. I don't expect Steph Curry to go 4 for 21 from the floor. Very never end, and that's what he shot last night. Now give Mikal Bridges and the rest of those guys a lot of credit. They hounded him, but normally when Steph goes 4 for 21, which by the way I don't think he's ever done, it's more on him. He's missing shots that he normally makes. So that's my only hesitancy. Let's hold back on crowning Phoenix as the favorite right now. We're not even close to Christmas. By the way, Klay Thompson comes back, James Wiseman comes back. I think Gold State's still right there, if not better than Phoenix, despite that loss.
Yeah, I don't think that you can glean anything out of one game in the NBA, but certainly to me, these two teams look like the best teams in basketball right now.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think we're a quarter of the way through the season. So, it's enough of a sample size to say pretty definitively, okay, these two teams we expect should be in the mix towards the end, barring injury. And Phoenix, like you mentioned, Sap, they're a very well-rounded team. We talked about this a lot last year during their playoff run and during the NBA Finals, is that it's a well-built team. They have different strengths. Their star players all can do different things. And so it's a really well-built team, and you see how strong they are defensively. They mentioned this about 1,000 times last night during the fourth quarter, but it was the first time the Warriors have been held under 100 points this season. So that's a massive accomplishment for Phoenix. And yes, Steph Curry had an off night, but a lot of that goes to the defense of Phoenix. And in addition to that, Devin Booker only played 15 minutes last night because he left with injury. So Phoenix was able to overcome that to beat the Warriors. So Phoenix certainly looks really strong. You and I both thought that they were going to start the season off on a finals hangover. That clearly has not happened. So we were both.
Well, we were right. We were right. They were 1-3. I didn't expect them to go on a 17-game winning streak.
We were right for 4 games.
Yeah, for 4 games. I'm going to go, told you Phoenix is going to struggle this year. The final hangover. And here we are. They went through the entire month of November without losing a game and won 17 in a row. So good luck to that. I mean, they've just really stepped up. And look, Monty Williams is a guy we both really like a lot. We think he's a top tier coach and appears to be a better human being than a basketball coach, which is saying a lot. The thing with Phoenix that I was really impressed with last night is Mikal Bridges didn't score, didn't play well. Well, he just hounded Steph Curry.
Yeah.
And again, that's the only thing you could do against Steph. He's going to still make his shots, although he didn't last night. But what they realize as a team is Mikal Bridges' primary responsibility in that game was to defend Steph Curry. Like, it's okay that you didn't score. Let me go play defense. That's what a winning team does.
Yeah, Sap, he played the most minutes in the game last night. He played 41 minutes.
And he was an excellent player, even though he didn't score a point, which is just kind of odd, right? But, Dennis Rodman's in the Hall of Fame, and I'm not comparing Mikal Bridges to Dennis Rodman as a defender, certainly not as a rebounder, but Dennis Rodman's in the Hall of Fame primarily because he was a great defender and a great rebounder who oftentimes in games would not score or would maybe get one bucket and yet was an impact player. And I'm not saying Mikal Bridges is going to continue to, hold Steph Curry to 4 for 21 shooting, because that doesn't happen. But that's when the team is really bought in to the culture. It's like, I'm okay. I didn't score tonight. I'm not going to pout about it. I'm going to go play defense. I'm going to move the ball, set screen, whatever. And then you get Jay Crowder pitches in with 14 points. Cam Johnson, who I love. I think he's such an efficient player. 14 points. You got Cam Payne goes out there and fills in for Chris Paul when they want to rest him some. And they look like they're going to be a real tough team to beat out there, as is Golden State. And again, we still got 3/4 of the season remaining. So we'll see what happens with those other teams that we expected to be contenders out west. Denver and LA both kind of hovering around 5. Dallas has struggled somewhat, and Luka's been out for several games, so I think they're going to find themselves as well. But right now, Phoenix and Golden State look like the two best teams in the West, if not the two best teams in basketball.
Yeah, you know what I thought about the two big takeaways I have from this game is that Phoenix's defense is really, really good. And that obviously translates really well in the postseason. We saw it last year. And that for the Warriors, they have one major flaw, and that's defending in the paint. Maybe once they get James Wiseman back, that will rectify itself, though I think that's a big ask for a guy who's played, only a handful of NBA games to suddenly cure that. But I think you were able to see with DeAndre Ayton last night, at times, he looked like the best player on the court. In fact, he had the best probably statistical game last night. Golden State struggles to defend the paint. Now, fortunately for them, there's not a whole lot of teams that, put a focus on having their big guys score a lot. So I don't know that they'll run into that a lot, but I could see it being a problem if they play Phoenix in a 7-game series in the playoffs, which at this point looks inevitable. I do think that they don't have a lot that they can do to combat DeAndre Ayton. The same thing goes if the Lakers are able to get their shit together. Anthony Davis, I think, could be able to dominate this team potentially, but sometimes he's just unwilling to do that dirty work in the paint. In fact, you saw a quote from him this week: "I'm just going to keep taking threes, whether they go in or not." That's not necessarily the attitude I want from my
shooting
19%
from three. Like, if you're shooting 19% from three. So here's the thing about the Lakers. Russell Westbrook is not the worst 3-point shooter on the team. It's actually Anthony Davis. That's saying a lot. LeBron, who hits about 34% from three, and I think he takes too many threes, looks like Steph Curry compared to those two guys. So I think what we're getting at, though, is that the elephant in the room is still the Lakers, because if they get their shit together, like you said, they still can be a matchup nightmare for even Phoenix, because I still maintain if LeBron and Anthony Davis were healthy last year, they would have beat Phoenix in that playoff series. They lost in 6 games. LeBron was hobbled. Anthony Davis got hurt a third of the way through that series and missed a couple of games, or when he was out there, it looked like he wasn't even engaged. I think if they're healthy and you see Russell Westbrook kind of getting more engaged, that they can certainly compete with those two teams. It comes down to defense, and best player still remains Chris Paul. I mean, I love Devin Booker. I love DeAndre Ayton, and they defer to Chris Paul. He's still their best player. He's a future Hall of Famer, all-time great player, all-time great point guard. He plays such high-level defense that rubs off on the rest of the roster, right? I mean, that's just the way the NBA works. If your best player is engaged defensively, you're going to be tough defensively because everybody else says, well, our best player's playing defensively. I've got to do it too because I'll look inferior. That's a problem with the Lakers because their best player still is LeBron James, and he's not engaged defensively. He hasn't been this year. Now he's dealt with, and we're going to talk about, he's got COVID now, and he's going to be out 7 to 10 days, and he's had the abdomen injury. I think, when he gets healthy, if that ever is the case, he'll get engaged defensively, and that will up the defensive intensity of the entire roster. We see that. And I think that's where Phoenix has a lot of teams beat, is their best player is one of the all-time great defensive point guards. Like you always think of great defensive guys as, wing defenders, whether it was Jordan or Pippen or Kawhi or Kobe or LeBron or whatever, or Dennis Rodman, or you think of big guys, rim protectors. You don't generally think of point guards as great defensive players. Well, Chris Paul may be the best defensive point guard in the history of the sport, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he's still excellent defensively, even at his, advanced age. And he's still, it's funny that only a couple of years ago, Sap, we were in his last year in Houston, we were sort of writing this guy off. His contract is bloated. His career is really winding down. And the past 3 years, the 1 year in Oklahoma City, and now this last year and this year, I mean, he's been just a revelation. He's still proven to be one of the best players in the NBA.
He has to be the alpha dog on a team, right? Just personality wise, and to be the point guard, you kind of have to be that. It just didn't really work with James Harden, even though they had a great season together. If he doesn't injure his hamstring in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals back in 2018, Houston probably wins that series and wins the title. He gets hurt Game 6 and Game 7 on the road, and they get to the finals and beat LeBron in Cleveland. So I look at that and say that, they were that close to winning a championship, but it never really felt like it worked, right? Because Harden needs the ball in his hands. Chris Paul needs the ball in his hands. They have 2 point guards out there. It's like having 2 quarterbacks. You got to have the one guy who's the main man, and that's Chris Paul wherever he's played, because he is a true point guard. I mean, he's the closest thing I've seen to Isaiah Thomas, a real floor general who knows how to set up his teammates, but then if you need him to, he can go out and score as well. So he's kind of the guy that runs that team, and I think he's in a really great situation right now with Devin Booker, who's a young star, and DeAndre Ayton, who's just about to enter his prime. I mean, those 2 guys really defer to him. I don't know how long it's going to last, because I think he has a tendency to rub people the wrong way after a period of time, but it seems like he's been better with this team, because this may be his last opportunity to win a championship, and that's the only thing missing on his resume is a championship. You can make a case he's one of the 2 or 3 greatest players to never win a championship. Elgin Baylor, Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, Chris Paul. Those are like the first 4 names that come to mind to me. I mean, Patrick Ewing is another. So that's all he needs to do is win a championship, and he came damn close last year. So yeah, he sets the tone for that team. And I know later in the podcast we're going to talk about MVP candidates. Despite only averaging less than 15 points per game, he is an MVP candidate. You got to have someone from Phoenix, just like last year, where he finished, I believe, 4th. It was Jokic was 1. Embiid was 2. I think Steph was 3, and Giannis and Chris Paul were 4-5 or 5-4.
Yeah, in some order. Yeah,
somewhere in that order. He deserves it, even though he doesn't score like this guy. He also does lead the league in assists, and that means a lot too. And then look, if a team's 18-3 at this point, someone on that team has to be an MVP candidate. And I would still say it's Chris Paul, even more so than Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, although they're both, emerging superstars.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And certainly the Suns look legit. I mean, they look impressive. And it's, you can't be a bad team and win 17 games in a row in the NBA.
No.
It doesn't work like that. So yeah, it was a really good game last night. These 2 teams seem to really they really got up for the game. It was very competitive throughout. Obviously it was close throughout the game. And I would expect these 2 teams to be constantly battling for a pole position in the West throughout the year. I think they've sufficiently separated themselves from the pack, where it seems like, I mean, I know we're only 22 games into the season, but it seems like it will be hard pressed for another team to catch either of them in the West right now. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Utah is the next closest. They're already 4 games behind. And then after them, it's Dallas, who's 7 games behind. It's going to be really hard. And I know that seems silly this early in the season, but they've really pulled ahead.
It doesn't look like these teams superstars load manage, right? Like Chris Paul plays every night. Devin Booker plays every night. He may miss a few games with that hamstring. Ayton's out there every night. Steph plays all the time. Same thing with Draymond Green. And then they're getting Klay Thompson and James Wiseman back. So yeah, they're going to keep pounding away and build up those wins. They meet again Friday in Phoenix, and then they meet Christmas Day. So we're going to see Phoenix against Golden State 3 times in about a 4-week period, which is going to be great to watch. It's fun to watch those two teams because they both play defense, but I love watching their offense because it's constant motion. There's not a lot of ISO, which the league has become predominantly an ISO league. Well, watching them to me is really fascinating to watch. They kind of treat it like soccer, a lot of movement, and not having, the ball on your foot in soccer or the ball in your hands in basketball. It's really a pleasure to watch that. They look like two really high-tech passing attacks in the NFL, whereas a team like the Lakers feels like, the Patriots ground and pound, like
Right.
beat you up with an offensive line. Phoenix and Golden State look like the two best teams in the West by far.
Yeah, I think, when you get into the top tier teams, then it becomes a game of matchups, right? And I think
Right.
for Phoenix, they had that matchup that they liked really last night with Ayton going against the front line of the Warriors. And as great of a defender as Draymond Green is, and I think he's an all-time great defender, he's not big enough to defend Ayton. Looney's not big enough to defend Ayton. And so, Ayton last night, 11 of 19 from the floor, 11 rebounds, 24 points. He did basically whatever he wanted to in the post. And that's why I'm still not going to write the Lakers off, Sap, is because I do feel like they do have those matchups that they can take advantage of. It's just a matter of the chemistry seems off because they all these new pieces, and two, they haven't really been healthy, and that sort of leads us into what we wanted to talk about next, which is now LeBron James is going to miss 10 days with COVID after missing time with an abdomen injury, and last year he had was it a leg thing, in the year before a groin
Ankle.
Yeah, so okay, things are catching up to LeBron. COVID obviously isn't an age thing. It's just he got unlucky. I believe he's vaccinated, and he had a breakthrough case. And the NBA policy is you have to sit out 10 days once you test positive. So it's another setback for the Lakers in a season of setbacks. LeBron obviously hasn't had his typical influence on this Lakers team in terms of winning. Is this how much further does this now set the Lakers, Sap?
Well, I think in a sense it gives Westbrook and Anthony Davis a chance to prove themselves, right? I mean, these are both guys that are on the all-time NBA 75 list, and deservedly so. Well, Anthony Davis, we kind of talked about, I think he was one of the fringe candidates for that.
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook for sure. The guy's an MVP, averaged a triple-double 4 out of 5 years. He's been in the league a dozen years. He deserves to be on that list. Anthony Davis, to me, was a fringe guy. You can make a case that Dwight Howard is in terms of their entire career, but that's for another day. But this gives them an opportunity to continue to grow. And that's why you brought Westbrook to the Lakers, right? For times like this, it's December. No one planned on LeBron having COVID, but, he's going to miss 10 days. So now Russell Westbrook can go out there and give you 36 minutes. He's playing better now than he was earlier. And I said that was going to be the case with him. Look at his last two destinations. Houston, he struggled early, caught fire the second half of the year, and Houston made the postseason. Washington last year was not very good early. The second half of the year, he averaged 22, 14, and 14. I don't care what league you're in or what the hell you're doing. Those are just ridiculous numbers. And they made the playoffs, right? And they lost in 5 games to Philly in the first round. But I think he'll continue to get better. And Anthony Davis at some point has to take the bull by the horns and act like a franchise caliber player. I said this before, Jet. Oftentimes when a player breaks through and wins a championship, their game expands. We're seeing that with Giannis. He's even better than he was last year because now that pressure is off. He's a champion now, something that Barkley and Karl Malone never experienced. This guy's already a champion. There's a burden that's been lifted, and he can continue to grow as a player. Well, Anthony Davis won the championship the year before, and his plays regressed. It's almost like he felt like he accomplished everything he wanted to, and he's not the player he was his first year in LA. There's been some injury concerns. But again, like you said earlier, he loves taking three-pointers. He's a 19% three-point shooter. When he's in the low post or even the mid-range game, he's unstoppable. He is the most skilled. I would say he and Joel Embiid are the two most skilled big men in the league. And I think Anthony Davis may be even more skilled. He's a former guard. I mean, that's what he was early in high school. He had that growth spurt. Went to Kentucky, won a national championship. I mean, he handles the ball like a guard, but you don't have to do that all the time on the court. That's nice to have that in your toolbox, but you don't have to rely on it and great touch around the basket. So I think at some point when he just realizes, and again, we've been saying this entire career, although he's had a great career, it could be even better if he was that engaged and that hungry the way Giannis is. Now, he's never going to be that, right? Because Giannis just has that within him because he was the 15th pick and he came from a completely different background than Anthony Davis. And so he's such a hungry player, whereas Anthony Davis is already, he was a champion as a fresh rookie. He was the first pick in the draft. He was supposed to be this great. Giannis kind of came out of, I wouldn't say nowhere, but pretty much out of nowhere.
Yeah, nowhere. Yeah.
He came out of nowhere. He's the 15th pick, and people were like, who is this guy? We were intrigued by his name more than anything. Like, no one can say his name, so we just call him the Greek Freak. And now I think he's the best player in basketball. Certainly he, Steph, and KD are the three guys I think of now, with LeBron, kind of as the guy there that we know is quite capable on any given night being the best player in the league. But, he's older and he's not as durable. But I'm not saying Anthony Davis has to go out there with the desire of Anthony Davis. He goes out with some desire, he can be that good. So I think, long answer short, LeBron being out for 10 days, we'll just continue to see how Westbrook and Anthony Davis continue to grow in their roles. And hopefully when LeBron comes back, he normally can fit in with those players, then they'll be that much better for it. But the problem is, Jet, they're essentially a 500 team. They've had the softest schedule in the NBA. 2/3 of their games have played at home against the likes of Detroit and OKC and a bunch of shit teams. And look, they lost twice to OKC after having 25 and 19-point leads in 2 different games. You can't do that if you're a real contender.
Yeah, they have not. I mean, they've played Houston twice. They played Oklahoma City twice. They played Detroit twice. They have not played the elite of the league at all. And it's gotten so bad to the point where they're celebrating wins the past 2 nights over Detroit and Sacramento like it was some sort of massive accomplishment.
Right.
LeBron's doing the silencer dance against the Indiana Pacers. Yeah, so
right.
I don't know. I guess small victories when you're struggling to start the season. But so guess my question for you, Sap, and you sort of just said it is, does it not really matter if LeBron doesn't play all that much with these guys when the postseason comes around?
No, he has to play. He has to play. I mean, the year he carried Cleveland to the finals in 2018, he played every game. So he was able to connect with his teammates early, and then they flipped the roster at the trade deadline. He continued to play every game. I thought he should have been the MVP that year. And they made it to the finals with basically LeBron, a banged-up Kevin Love, and Jeff Green as his 3rd best player. So I do think the Lakers will make moves at the trade deadline. At that point, he's going to have to be invested to be out there every night. He's not the easiest guy to play with, in a sense that it's kind of like Tom Brady at quarterback, not the easiest guy to play with because the standards are so high and they play at such an intellectual level that you may not be able to, quite frankly, you're not going to be able to match it. And it can be somewhat intimidating. We say, if you're a young wide receiver, Tom Brady, that's got to be intimidating, right? The guy's 17 years older than you. He's got 7 Super Bowls. And if you're a yard off on your route, he's going to let you know about it. Same thing
typically
with LeBron.
Just doesn't throw to young wide receivers.
At that point, he's like, he freezes them out, right? And LeBron at that point, like, if the guy's in the wrong place, he's not getting the ball and he's going to hear about it. And LeBron does it maybe in a friendlier way than Brady. Yeah, much more passive aggressive, whereas Brady will get in your face and let you know about it. So, but that's a lot of pressure for a young player. The thing is, the Lakers have a lot of old guys, so I think they can kind of deal with it, and he knows how to deal with that. That's why he wants the old guys. But no, they're going to need him out there. Absolutely. And again, I want to see Anthony Davis at the 5, LeBron at the 4. They have a lot of trash on that team that I'm not sure. Avery Bradley starting, Jet. He was waived by Golden State.
Yeah.
I mean, he's starting in the backcourt. He's 5 years past his prime? I mean, is that something that is accurate?
He's still an NBA caliber player, but he shouldn't be starting on an NBA team.
No, I mean, Phoenix's backcourt is Chris Paul and Devin Booker. Golden State has Steph Curry in the left, Klay Thompson. The Lakers are coming at you with Russell Westbrook, who's a flawed player, and Avery Bradley, neither really good outside shooters. And that's the other thing, too, is LeBron's always been best with really good perimeter shooters. He doesn't have that. Maybe they'll get that at the trade deadline. I still wouldn't count them up because I think because they can play differently than other teams with that size of Anthony Davis. And look, last night in their win against Sacramento, Dwight Howard was huge. And I would rather see more Dwight Howard than DeAndre Jordan. I have no clue why DeAndre Jordan even plays. I mean,
He's got nothing
he's
left.
got nothing. I mean, Brooklyn got rid of him, and he's best friends with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. They probably said this guy's got nothing left, and they're best friends with him. Why the hell did the Lakers pick him up? The Lakers would have been better off with JaVale McGee, who's with Phoenix and is a backup center for DeAndre Ayton. I think Dwight Howard can still play because he brings some physicality to the game. But again, you got to limit his numbers. He's not going to go out there and play 32 minutes a night. But if he gives you 16, 18 minutes a night, good. So I wouldn't count them out because they can play differently than other teams. But the key for the Lakers is when or if are they going to start playing defense? That because 2 years ago when they won the championship, they were the best defensive team in basketball. LeBron set the tone for that. Last year, they were a good defensive team. Then they had to deal with injuries at the end. Right now, they're a terrible defensive team. And in that league, as much as we talk about great three-point shooting and high-scoring games, defense still is very, very important. In fact, this year we see it even more so because they're letting them play defense, be more physical. Yeah. And if you're the worst defensive team in the league, you're not winning a championship, especially when on the other end of the floor you can't shoot threes. You're not good at that either. Like, what are you bringing to the table?
Yeah, I think it's certainly it's worrisome that on a team that has LeBron and Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook, three guys who I think are plus defenders, that they give up just an insane amount of points. But we'll continue to talk obviously about the Lakers throughout the season because they're probably the most interesting team in the league because it's LA, because they have all these stars, all these old guys. But it's certainly the early returns aren't great, and like you said, the schedule's only going to get harder from here, Sap. So we'll continue to obviously keep an eye on them and see how they do without LeBron for the next 10 days. But Sap, before we get out of here, we haven't done this yet this season. Take a look at our MVP ladder now that we're about a quarter of the way through the year. I think it's fair to take a look at our top 5 MVP candidates. So, Sap, do you want to do this in ascending order or descending order?
Descending order. Make it dramatic. Jets, okay. Like America pageant.
All right, go. I'm gonna defer to you first. Go ahead.
Okay, number 5, I've got Nikola Jokic, who's the reigning MVP. He's having as good a year this year as he had last year. The only difference is his team is 10-10, and there are other worthy candidates for MVP who are playing on teams with much better records. So that kind of elevates them and puts Nikola Jokic at number 5.
Okay, I think I wanted to put Jokic on, but he has, unlike last year where he played every game, he has missed, I think, 5 or 6 games this year.
Yep.
So, if that's what he ends the season with, just missing 5 or 6 games, it's not a problem. But, if you're just 20 games into it, I'm going to ding you for that. So at number 5, for me, Sap, I'm going to say Trey Young. That's basically the Hawks started off slow. They're playing a little bit better. He's 5th in the league in scoring right now. He's a tremendous passer. I mean, I saw him play against the Celtics, and when the Hawks, basically had their way with the Celtics, like every team does. He didn't have a great shooting night, but he affected the game so much with his passing. So I'm going to put him at number 5.
Yeah, good choice. I had him just outside my top 5 with the likes of Paul George and DeMar DeRozan, John Morant, Luka. I had them outside my top 5. Number 4 for me is Giannis. They're 13-8. He's averaging 27, 12, and 6 blocks a game. Giannis has become a better version of Karl Malone because those were like Karl Malone stats every year. Without the assists, Karl Malone was never a guy who would get you 6 assists a game. He was a decent passer for a big man, but Giannis has that championship behind him, and he's a better defender than Karl Malone. So I have him at number 4, and it would not shock me if he continues to just grow his game, which he has, that he elevates himself right at the top of the list. He's a 2-time MVP. I mean, this guy is the best player in the world right now, in my opinion, because the other guys that are candidates, he's better on the defensive end. That's kind of the separator. So I have Giannis at number 4.
At number 4, I have DeMar DeRozan, who has been, I think, a revelation this year. The Bulls are the second best team in the East record-wise. A big part of that has been the reliability, the consistent scoring out of DeMar DeRozan, who I thought was at the tail end of his career, and he's having actually a career season. averaging almost 26 points a game for Chicago. This team invested a lot of money in the offseason, and it seems like it's paid off so far. And of all their good players, of which they have many, Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeRozan, Vucevic, I think DeRozan's been the most impactful for them. So I have him at number 4.
He brought that winning quotient as well. I mean, we can make fun of the fact, but that's because a prime LeBron was playing in either Cleveland or Miami. But they were always contending, and I think he and Kyle Lowry showed you that they were winning caliber players, and he's carried that to Chicago with him. He's looking more and more like Kawhi Leonard out there, right? He's improved as a 3-point shooter. He's got the mid-range game, and he's a good defender. So, yeah, that's a good one as well. Again, we've had so many players having really good starts to the season. I didn't put him in there. Number 3 for me is Chris Paul. And again, he's only averaging 15 a game, but he's averaging 10.1 assists, which leads the league in leadership. And to come back from a disappointing finals just a few months ago and to get off to the start that Phoenix is off to, I think he deserves a lot of credit. He and Monty Williams as the head coach are the 2 leaders on the team. Give them both a ton of credit. I have CP3 at number 3.
At number 3, I have Giannis. I don't have to go over it for all the reasons you just said. The Milwaukee started off really poorly. He wasn't in the lineup. A lot of their other good players were in and out of the lineup. They've really turned it around recently. You could certainly make a case he's the best player in basketball. He's dominant every night he plays. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have off nights, which is sort of the mark of a superstar player. We've talked about this a lot on the show, Seth. There's a difference between a star player and a superstar player. Star player like Jason Tatum has off nights. Right. This season he's had a lot of them. Superstar players like Giannis doesn't really have off nights.
He doesn't.
He's going to give you his 27 points, his 8 to 10 rebounds, his 6 or 7 assists, maybe a block or 2, a steal or 2, ton of energy, all world defense. You're in for a handful every single night you play him. He's not going to take a game off.
He's become as reliable as Karl Malone was. And the nickname for Karl Malone was great. The mailman. He delivered all the time. And I was not a Karl Malone. I am still not a Karl Malone fan. I think he's slightly overrated, but consistent, durable, all of those things. But Giannis is similar to Karl Malone in that sense, except his ceiling is even higher, right? And I think he's a better defender, more versatile defender than Karl Malone was, better passer, and the scoring and rebounding is pretty comparable. And I also think his teammates like him better than
he's a better
Karl
teammate,
Malone's teammates. Much better teammate. I mean, easier guy to root for, and now a champion. So great choice there with Giannis. He's right at the top of the level. Number 2 for me is Steph Curry. I'm going to go with Steph Curry as my number 2 MVP candidate. Earlier in the week, I tweeted out I had him number 1, but I kind of adjusted that, not just based on last night when he went 4 for 21 from the floor in a big game. Steph's outstanding. He's averaging nearly 28 a game, gives you nearly 6 rebounds a game at 6'3", 6.5 assists, shooting 41% from 3. I mean, obviously he's the best player on Golden State, which is 18 and 3. He's got some really nice pieces around him, though. Draymond does all the dirty work. Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins have really stepped up and have developed their games. And I think a lot of it is because of Steph. He opens up the court for so many guys. I've got Steph number 2.
Yeah, I think 1 and 2 in any order is pretty obvious to me. This season, you and I are just going to flip flop them. I have Kevin Durant at number 2. I mean, you can't say a bad thing about Kevin Durant other than he maybe trusted the wrong person in Kyrie Irving, so maybe he doesn't have a good judgment of character.
No,
but that's the biggest criticism you can give the guy is, he tied his fortunes to a crazy person. But yeah, he's been outstanding this season. I know you're going to talk about him in a second, Sap, but 28.5 points a game, playing good defense, shooting incredibly efficiently, 7.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists. He does everything. He's unstoppable. Once you're talking about these top 3 MVP candidates, Sap, I mean, there's very few holes in their game. In fact, the guy I have at number 1 is Steph Curry. And he, of those 3 guys, maybe has the most holes in his game because he's not an elite defender. Durant's not an elite defender, but he's a above average defender. And when he wants to, he's a very good defender. Giannis of those 3 is obviously the best. But Durant is just, I mean, he has no flaw in his game.
No, he's the greatest offensive player in the history of the sport, in my opinion. And I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm 58 years old. I've seen a lot of great players. He is the most unstoppable force in the history of the sport because he is in scoring position from midcourt in.
He does it in his sleep, Sap.
Well, yeah, it was. I think we were texting one night, and you're like, he never has a bad game. Like he got off to a bad start in the game against the Knicks last night, and then he was unstoppable in the second half. And it's like I always, I mean, I think we talked about this on an earlier podcast, or maybe I was just talking to someone else. If he ever had the mentality of Jordan or Kobe, he'd score. Like because he's a better
texted
scorer
that to me.
than those
You
guys.
did, yeah.
I said, if this guy ever like woke up one day and said, get out of my way, I'm going to just, force it down everyone's throat. I'm going to be unstoppable. Even if he had the mindset of like Carmelo Anthony, he would score 40 a night, but he doesn't go there because he's such a smart player. He's an excellent passer, an excellent rebounder, like you said, a good defender. Look at his efficiency, Jet. 54% from the floor, 39% from three, and I guarantee you he'll be up over 40% shortly, like maybe his next game.
I will say this,
86% from the throws.
He's the most effortless player I've ever seen. Most effortless player I've ever seen.
And Bob Ryan, who I think we both love. I mean, he's the, might as well have been the commissioner of basketball, a great writer formerly with the Boston Globe and still does work for ESPN. He says, I've never seen anybody that effortless. He said the same exact thing like you did. It's like scoring in an NBA game should not look that easy, right? I mean, like Jordan and Kobe, there was a lot of effort there. Feet tall, their athleticism was through the roof. Wilt was a powerful guy, and Kareem had that great hook shot, but Durant can score in any possible way imaginable. That's what separates him from every player I've ever seen as a pure scorer. I have him number one for MVP. It is kind of weird that the guy's only won one MVP, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of guys in the history of the NBA that you go, how the hell did they only win one MVP?
Right.
Like, how the hell did
Kobe and Shaq stick out like sore thumbs in that list?
Kobe and Shaq, and I think Kevin Durant's the other guy. Like LeBron has 4, Jordan has 5, Russell has 6, Kareem has 6. I mean, okay, and Wilt has 5. Like that makes sense, right? Like those guys were the most dominant guys, and I think Bird and Moses Malone each have 3.
Yeah.
But how the hell does Kevin Durant only have 1? And I will say this: the guys like Jerry West and Elgin Baylor and Oscar Robertson, when they were playing, it was strictly a center's award. It's almost like quarterbacks now in the NFL. Like the quarterback's going to win the NFL MVP again this year. So the same thing with basketball for most of the 60s into the 70s. It was either, okay, Russell, Chamberlain, then Kareem came along, Moses Malone came along. Let's just give it to the center. And then Jordan, Bird, and Magic kind of changed that. Okay, we can give it to players not playing center. It's weird that Kevin Durant has 1 MVP. You would think, to me, it's weird that LeBron only has 4. He could have 8 for all we know. I mean,
I mean, that's the exact reason why he has 1. He's been blocked by LeBron, and also he did it to himself by going to Golden State. Right. He was never going to be able to win an MVP on that team because no one was going to give it to him.
Right.
The people vote for these awards. No one was going to give it to anybody on Golden State once that team became a super team. So. Right. This is his best chance in a while to win MVP. Him and I have Curry 1. You have Curry 2. It's by the narrowest of margins. I wouldn't be upset with you giving it to either of those guys.
I could change that by our next podcast. I mean, I had Steph 1, Kevin Durant 2, and then I'm watching the games the other night. And again, this isn't recency bias. I know Steph had a rough night. I'm just looking at Durant. I'm like, Mikal Bridges did a really nice job against Steph Curry. I don't think he really can guard Steph Curry. It's just you hope he misses. I know you can't guard Kevin Durant. There's nothing you could do. And in fact, the game-winning play, you saw what he did, right? He had the ball 35 feet away from the basket. The Knicks sent 2 defenders at him. What did that do? Open up the middle. He makes the nice pass. Player goes to the free throw line, hits 2 free throws, and then that's win. That's the smart basketball player, right? Because that's what he does. Like Kobe or Jordan somehow would have tried to fire off shots in that point and got them. They're phenomenal players. This guy is so damn efficient. It's scary.
Yeah, I mean, he is. And, the only reason I'm giving Steph the slight nod over him is because of the team's record.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, I think that's what it is. And, they played phenomenal without their full cadre of players, but Durant's played with Harden in and out, and obviously no Kyrie
No
Irving.
Kyrie.
So
Yeah,
he gets a lot of credit for that as well.
Oh, he's carrying that team. I mean, James Harden now is starting to look more like James Harden, but he's been a lot of dead weight early in the season, and Durant's kind of carrying him. And like you said, no Kyrie Irving. Yeah, I mean, Steph's 18-3, Durant's 15-6, and we talked about it last week on one of the podcasts that this is a legacy season for those two guys, right? Because now they can go ahead and try to win a championship without each other, and Curry already has that. You know, he won that first one in Golden State without Kevin Durant. You know, who gets the MVP this year? Right now, they're the two favorites. You know, does Steph get his third or does Durant get his second? We're looking at two guys that were moving up in the rankings, and they both may join the top 12 in the history of the sport. In fact, I think at some point they're going to be in that top 12, top 10 even. Like, who's going to be higher, Steph or Kevin Durant? I think Kevin Taller, he's a better defender. Steph's had more impact on the game because he's changed the game more than anyone since Will Chamberlain. And I think he impacts his team more than anyone because he just opens up the court with his, unlimited range. So this is a legacy season for both of those players. And that's going to make it fun to watch all season.
Yeah, it certainly will. I think, it'll be the most impactful championship for either one of them if they're able to win it this year. So exciting season, a lot of great candidates for MVP, and I think that the top three players, to me, like you said, Sap, are pretty clear in the league right now. It's Giannis, Durant, and Curry in whatever order you want to put them in. And then if LeBron's able to stay healthy, obviously he's in there too, but he just hasn't been able to.
Yeah, and I think he's playing for something different at this point. Like it's his whole thing is
points.
Try to be right at the points. Okay, Skip Bayless. That's why he's chucking up threes at an uncommon rate. Like, I don't like when he takes 13 threes. I'm not a big fan of threes. He's the greatest driver of the basketball in the history of the sport. Go ahead and do that. He's a little skittish at the free throw line, and that does take a lot out of a player. Going to the basket takes a lot out of a player, especially someone who's about to turn 37. I mean, that's a lot, especially a big, strong guy like that. And we saw Kobe and Jordan, when they got deep into their career, they developed a low post game, that fadeaway that both Jordan and Kobe had. And I think LeBron has that too. I'd like to see him use more of that than chucking up threes. Fastest way to scoring is hitting threes, but missing threes, you don't get any points, and it really deflates a team. If he goes 2 for 13 from three, that's not a good thing. So I wish he would take fewer threes, but he's not really concerned with the MVP. He wants to score points and see if he can get that 5th championship. And that's what he's playing for at this point.
Yep. All right, Sap. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Again, we're presented by Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out our social medias at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. And we will be back with another one later in the week. So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you later. See ya.